As I was introduced, my name is Lorraine Pouchet. We say Pouchet too. I will answer to both. And thank you very much for your talk, sir, because it resonated in my heart when I see the damage that we are doing to our very beautiful island and the tourism product that we are supposed to have here. So I was asked to speak on a topic. And when I saw the topic, I said, moi, to speak about that? How can I? I'm not a lawyer. But I said, I have brain. That's why I'm in the NTA, right? Because we have some brains. So I started and some love for this country. So I said, okay, I'll do my little research and put together my talk. What I was asked to speak about is the importance of independent institutions and why we must not allow them to be politically influenced. That's a big mouthful. You all understand what that means? By the way, my type of speechifying is a little interactive, so I'm going to be throwing out a couple of questions somewhere along the line, okay? So the importance of independent institutions, why we must not allow them to be politically influenced. For us to be able to answer that and to consider the question, the first thing I will ask is, what is democracy? We are supposed to be a democratic society, aren't we? Do we believe that we are still a democratic society? Anybody here believes that Trinidad and Tobago is still a democratic society? I don't think we are, okay? And for me to be able to explain why it is important for us to be able to have our institutions not politically influenced, you need to understand what is democracy. So I'm going to explain a little bit to you. If you disagree, put it on a piece of paper. As the chair of the meeting said, we'll take the questions after. But what is a democracy? I looked it up. It says that a democracy a system, what is democracy? A system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, country, typically through elected representatives. There are two types of democracy. We have direct democracy, where the people have the authority to deliberate and decide legislation, or we have representative democracy, where the people choose governing officials to do that. And I think you all understand what we have, right? What do we have? Representative democracy. In Trinidad and Tobago, we as a people take part in elections every 5 years, resulting in a government and an opposition. Representative democracy. The opposition is supposed to be the check and balance of the government, and legislature can be passed in both the Parliament and Senate by majority votes, either by simple or 3/5 majority. Unfortunately, we have seen over the past 6 to 7 years an erosion of this process, since the government of the day has brought legislation requiring only simple majority votes to attack and erode the very principle that constitutes a democracy. And the sound of silence from the organizations and institutions that should be rallying against things like that. To have democracy, one should have the following: free and fair elections. We say our elections are free and fair. Sometimes I question that when I see the results. Active participation of all the citizens eligible to vote. Many of us seem to be in comas and do not understand that our vote is critical to the results of who will govern us for 5 years. We sit in our houses and we say, I don't need to vote. My vote don't matter. But I want to let you know something. When you don't vote, you're voting for the government that is in power. Okay? You need to come out and you need to vote. And anybody in here who has not registered for their ID, you better do it. And if you know anybody in your family who hasn't done it, once they have hit the age of 18, or they will hit the age of 18 by 2025, you better get them out to register so that they can vote. Protection of the human rights of all citizens is another aspect of democracy, and the rule of law. What does this rule of law mean? It means that it includes freedom of assembly, property rights, religion, speech, voting rights, etc. Democratic leadership needs to involve the people being led. Through the LAMP model, which I'll talk about in a little while, the NTA covenants with all our citizens, leadership of the people, by the people, for the people. You all should recognize that quote from Abraham Lincoln. In recent times, we in Trinidad and Tobago have been experiencing the opposite of democracy and what one may call a creeping dictatorship that now appears to be morphing into a full-fledged dictatorship. Full-fledged dictatorship. All manner of wrongdoing by deliberately interfering with and gerrymandering of our independent institutions. I will repeat that. All manner of wrongdoing by deliberately interfering with and the gerrymandering of our independent institutions. And the first one that should come to mind is the imbroglio that was put into place for our political leader with the Commissioner of Police situation. So obvious. What is a dictatorship? So let's understand what is a dictatorship now. A form of government characterized by a leader or a group of leaders that hold government power with few to no limitations. And don't fool yourself. It's not one person that is leading us astray. It's a group. It's a group. In other words, a form of government in which one person or a small group possesses absolute power without effective constitutional limitations. This country has been asking, begging, pleading for constitutional reform. Never has it come to light. I remember working with Prakash Ramadar under the Congress of the People when we did many forum of consultations with the people on constitutional reform. It was done, it was completed, it was handed in, and absolutely nothing came out of it. Okay? So it's not because we didn't try. Types of dictatorships can be autocratic, despotic, dictatorial, or monarchical. What type are we under right now? I will leave that for you to decide too. Think about it, okay? Think about it. It seems to be a mix of all of the above, but certainly dictatorial and despotic. There are 5 main characteristics of dictatorship. 1, suspension of elections and or civil liberties. 2, ruling by decree, which we definitely seem to be under. Repression of or direct attack on political opponents. I wouldn't even have to guess to that because we're seeing it happening. Not abiding by the procedures of the rule of law. Example, the current situation with the case against Ramdeen and Ram Logan. Thank God the DPP was able to stand up and be a man with a backbone. Existence of a cult of personality centered on the leader. Does that remind you of somebody in the past that caused havoc in Europe? What are the branches of government that exist in Trinidad and Tobago? Do you all know? You all are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. You're all supposed to be voting. You need to understand. 1 is the legislative formation. That is who makes the laws. Secondly is the executive function, the people we elect to run the government. And thirdly is the judicial function, which is adjudicative and interpretive. And right now, the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago, like they know that tune and that movie, The Sound of Silence, we're not hearing a word. Not a word. Some groups of lawyers are talking, but not the one that we call the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago. One wonders why. One scratches one head and wonders if there are some very lucrative briefs that are stopping them from speaking. So let us talk about the separation of powers and why that is so critical to maintain a democracy. 1, it avoids a concentration of public power in one body or one institution. It provides systems of checks and balances between the branches. So example, the Attorney General and the DPP. The Attorney General can't instruct the DPP. And he was very right in saying, brother, don't involve me in your kakala. And he stepped back one time. Okay? It is to provide efficient government. In other words, to staff institutions with experts and not party appointees. I draw to your mind the chaos from the COVID in the medical institutions. Who was running it? Somebody who used to write plays? Okay, you all must understand what we are dealing with. Political appointees. And fourthly, safeguarding the independence of the judiciary. Critical for democracy. An elective government is charged to manage the country for the good of all and must be caretakers of the national patrimony. They must account for how they spend our money and dispose of our assets. Make no mistake, the assets and the money in the HSF and all these things is our money. It don't belong to anybody pocket. It's everybody in here money. And when we borrowing and we borrowing and we borrowing and we don't know how we paying back, you know who's going to be paying back? Your children, your grandchildren. For a moment, let us consider the independent institutions in our country. As a population, we are to keep watch over their affairs. We are to be vigilant, ever mindful of any attempt to undermine the independence and impartiality of institutions established in law to preserve the democracy of the country's affairs. Government must not, I repeat, must not be replaced with interference. Persons selected to serve must not find themselves jumping to the beat of any politician. Therefore, the day after any election is not the time to relinquish our right to fairness, good governance, and transparency. Let us also understand that when a government reduces or constrains the annual budget allocation of independent bodies, such an action directly impacts the ability of such bodies to adequately fulfill their mandate. I had to step in to help someone because she's in a bed and cannot hardly even move herself. A lady who we knew many years ago in a flood, twice flooded in 1 week, living in a mess in a wheelchair. When I called the MP for the area, who is in the opposition and who I know personally and respect, said to me, I don't have a CPAP gang. I've been trying to get help for her. I sent certain people to help her, and you know what those certain people did? They stole from her. So through our network, somebody else went to help with a team yesterday and today to help that lady. Why is that area, that constituency being deprived of the funding that they need to help the people in the constituencies? People like you and me, it's our brethren. We can't allow that to continue. Hence, society has to be vigilant with any government that dares to boldly interfere in the affairs of our independent bodies and the persons selected to serve in such organizations. We are in dire times, not slipping, but free falling into a dictatorial side of government where those in power are of the opinion that they are not accountable to you and I for how they spend our money and how they manage the resources of our country. We as a people need to stand up and say, no more, no more. The NTA, through the LAMP model, is focused on ensuring that our institutions remain independent so that the needs of all citizens will be taken care of and provide the right to live a decent life with opportunities for all. What is the LAMP model? Leadership, accountability, which we do not see at all. We hear budget after budget with nothing being said about how the money from the last budget was spent, but we're spending more in this budget. Management. We need to have people who know what they're doing, who have the skills for the areas that they are put in place for. So management is a critical part, proper management. And the most important, measurement of performance. That's our LAMP model. Leadership, accountability, management, measurement of performance. If I can't measure your performance, I don't know if you're delivering what you're supposed to deliver. In essence, to sum up what I have said, democracy is the will of the majority while protecting the rights of the minority. We are beyond the point of idle complaints As citizens of this once beautiful Twin Island Republic, it is your duty to get involved. We call on you to partner with the National Transformation Alliance and let us save our nation. Now is the time. If not now, when do we intend to do it? I thank you.